It is so important for us as music teachers to keep our students in lessons. If our students move on, if they quit the studio, yeah, it's not the end of the world. Some students are going to quit. But the more students that do, the less chance we have to create lifelong musicians out of our students. The less chance we have to give them those wonderful musical experiences that inspire them to keep making music for their entire lives. It also means that your business is way less efficient because it costs you more, even if it's not in money, it's in time and onboarding and everything else and training the new family. It costs so much more to bring on a new student than it does to just keep one you already have. And we all know that it's wonderful to get new students and it's fun to develop that relationship in the beginning, but we get so much satisfaction from those students who continue with us for a long time, and they've been with us from age 13 up to age 20, as one of mine has right now. So it's more motivating for us to be able to continue with those students long term. It's a better business move. And it means that they get more out of the experience, because we all know that you can't learn piano in a year. It just doesn't happen. It takes a lot longer than people think. So let's dive into some of the reasons that students quit lessons. And then we're going to cover some of the ways we can work against those things, that we can undo some of those common issues that come up that cause students to leave. And as I go through these 5 things that are broad reasons why I believe students quit lessons, I want you to call me out if you think I missed one. Because I believe most quitters, I don't like that term, but most departers from a studio fit into one of these categories in terms of the reason, or several of them altogether. Let me know if you think there's a reason that doesn't fit one of these things. So the first one is the parent's view of the progress. What do I mean by that? These are the students who quit because the parent doesn't see the student moving forward. These might be the parents who are asking you for exams or for specific recital pieces or other measures of progress that are often way beyond the student's level and pretty unreasonable from our perspective. But the reason the parent is asking for that is because they're not seeing the progress that's happening, because it's really hard for an outsider to see that. They don't know how long it takes to be able to read intervals up to a fifth, or identify a few landmark notes, or play with a beautiful legato, or do any of the things that we're developing in our students. Most people, I would say almost all people, underestimate from the outside how long the beginning stages of study take. People know that studying a music instrument is not a quick fix situation. They know it takes time. But I think they do underestimate how long we stay in those beginner sounding stages in terms of the music we're making and the look of the music on the score. That takes a long time. So many students end up quitting because the parent can't see that their investment is paying off and that the student is making progress. Let me know if you've ever seen that in your studio. The second reason I think students quit is because the student isn't seeing the progress. This is more for older students perhaps, but it definitely can contribute from students who are younger asking their parents to quit lessons. This is where the student doesn't see that they've gotten anywhere, and they're not seeing that they're moving forward. And it can be harder as students move forward up levels to help them to see that they are moving forward. So when a student doesn't feel like they're getting anywhere, they might just quit. Wouldn't you? If you weren't getting anywhere? The third reason is relevance. Students who don't feel that what they're learning is relevant to them are going to quit. And again, this accelerates the older students are. So what do I mean by relevant? Well, relevant to them and their specific goals. So if a student feels that you're not helping to move them towards their goals, that you're doing things that are just your standard bucket, your standard path, that you're just following some formula and it's not about them and what they want, which might be something off the beaten path, they might quit. They also might quit because they don't feel that the music is relevant, and they might not even be able to articulate that that's what's happening. But they just aren't inspired by the music because they don't feel that it's relevant to them. It doesn't sound in a palette that they're used to. And while we have a great opportunity to expose students to classical music, and I'm not saying we shouldn't teach it, we do have to let students learn music that is relevant to them, that they see around them in the world, that they hear in their environment, and that just feels part of their culture, part of their palette, right? So when students don't feel that, they might quit. The fourth reason is a bit of a funny one for many of you maybe. Novelty. Have you thought about students quitting because of a lack of novelty? These are those students who quit because basically, and I didn't want to put this word on screen because it seems harsh, they're bored. They're quitting because of boredom. And we can fall into a trap with this one because they might have liked their beginning lessons and they were doing so well and nothing's changed. So why are they suddenly not satisfied? Well, they're not satisfied because nothing changed. There's no novelty. It doesn't feel fresh to them anymore. They feel like they're done with it. There's no novelty. And then the last one, this is huge. Anticipation. They don't have things to get excited for. They don't have things to look forward to. They don't see what's on the horizon that's, novel or different or just something they've been working towards for a long time. It's just more of the same, or they just don't know what's coming up. They don't know where they're going and when they're going to get there. So they quit. So those are my 5 reasons. Let me know if you have a reason for me that doesn't fit one of these. And I'm going to start by addressing one that I think you might come up with. So I'm going to try and anticipate the reason that you might come up with immediately. Some of you might say, no, the primary reason my students quit is because they're overscheduled. I'm sorry, that's not the reason they quit. It is a contributing factor in some things, but if they had all of these things, if they were anticipating things that were coming up that were really fun, if they found their lessons novel and fun and interesting, if they seemed relevant to them and what they want to learn, if they can see that they're making progress and their parents can see that they're making progress, they would prioritize piano over the other thing. I mean, unless we're talking about some Olympic swimmer trek, they're going to prioritize piano. It's not the overscheduling that did it. It's one of these things that causes them to see themselves as overscheduled, and piano is the thing I'm going to cut. So maybe that was one you were going to come up to. Maybe not. Oh, Jana, isn't that true? COVID has been the worst for anticipation. We have to come up with those events. And I know it feels tough that the onus is on us. And it feels like I just don't want to do it. And I have felt that too, right? You're not alone in that. Just like, but I just can't. And yes, sometimes you just can't. But every so often we do have to come up with those events so that our students have things to come up with. And it doesn't have to be some huge thing, okay? I'm not saying you have to learn all the software and all the things and it has to be fresh every time. You can come up with simple things that are actually really fun and motivating and something to look forward to. Like at the moment for us, it's our composing project, right? We've been composing together and our students here at Colourful Keys, they're looking forward to getting that book. That's something they're anticipating that's different, it's fresh, and they know it's coming up. As well as a concert, actually, for us at this time of year. So let's get into it. We're going to reverse this. All of this mess is going to go away. How about that? We want to get it off the screen. And we're going to do that by coming up with ways to have things to combat these issues, right? So let's do it in reverse. Let's start with anticipation. What are some ways, and I'd love some brainstorming from you guys too, what are some ways that we can have that anticipation for students? I just mentioned one of them. Doing a composing project where you produce a finished book or even a SoundCloud page or any other finished product at the end of it, or just a printed out copy of their composition, where they're looking forward to it being finished. That's a short to medium term project. It definitely contributes towards that anticipation. And you can build into that students looking forward to the next year and the year after that and the year after that. If you're like me and you do a composing project every year, your students know that there's going to be a different theme next year, different way to collaborate with other people in the studio, and they're going to get a new experience out of that, and they're looking forward to what that's going to be and how their own composing skills are going to develop to next year, right? We're not doing composing all year, all the time in this kind of detailed way. We do it once a year and it's a big event for them. A concert is another thing that students can definitely look forward to. If you can't do an in-person concert, that doesn't mean you can't do one. You can do various different video versions, and we have ideas on the channel in another video that I did about that. So there's no excuse, you really can do it in a very low-tech way. What else can we look forward to? What else can we have our students look forward to? One thing that Jana, who's in the chat right now, does in her studio, I believe, is having students listen to a list of pieces that every student should know about, as in, like, not that they're going to have to learn these things, but, you know, the favorites and the ones that they might learn someday. Having students become familiar with those is huge. So, and I would even suggest, and possibly Jana does this, that there's several at different levels along the way. So it's not that they're all, you know, the full level 10 Jane McGrath level. They can be steps along the way. You know, you can have all the standards, you know what I mean. All the ones we come across, like the arabesque from Bergmüller is in there, and various different ones that students over and over get excited to learn. And it doesn't have to be all classical, it could be a mixture. It could be studio favorites that you know your students again and again want to learn. Or it can be pop songs that are way beyond their abilities. Like if they are dying to learn Bohemian Rhapsody and they're just nowhere near having a convincing enough harmony for that. They don't have the ability to play enough of the chords, even in an arrangement, to make it convincing. Well, that's something they can be anticipating and working towards, but only if you have those conversations and develop those listening lists with them. So if we give our students something to anticipate, something to look towards, something to see where they're going to, we can remove that objection, and that's one less reason why they might quit. What about novelty? What can we do to make our lessons more novel? Something I did last year in online lessons was called the surprise starters, and members can find all of these in the video library, the training library. And there are 12 of them in total, and they're just fun little ways to start the lesson. But you can use that idea even beyond those 12, right? So that was 12, that was a set of 12 that I did as a special to keep us all engaged in lessons ourselves and have some fun at the end of the last academic year. You can use those, you can recycle them as many times as you want, but you can also incorporate all sorts of other little warm-ups that your students in the first 5 minutes of lesson, they don't know what's coming. You can also incorporate games throughout your lessons and keep switching up the lesson pace. Now, a caveat here is that you do need to keep some sense of lesson routine. That is useful for your students, especially the younger ones. So I'm not saying make it totally haphazard and all over the place and they don't know what's going to happen. But you can add those little sparkles of novelty in that students know it's not same old, same old. They're not going to arrive and do their scales and play their practice pieces and start on a new piece and leave. That can get old pretty fast, can't it? Do we all remember how old that got? Right. So those are a few ways to keep things novel within lessons. You can also run different types of events like we've already talked about in our anticipation section. And you can make things more novel by mixing in some different lesson formats. So in my studio, we do mostly buddy lessons, which are lessons where the middle section is overlapping between two students. So I have one student for half an hour, then I have that student and a new student for a middle half an hour, and then I have a solo time with the second student. So I'll explain that better. So Anna comes along at 4:30. At 5, Ben comes, and Anna and Ben are together, 5 to 5:30. And then 5:30 to 6 is just Ben. So it's overlapping in the middle, and you can do different lengths of that, and I've talked about it extensively here on YouTube and on the blog. But that is one way where things do stay that bit more novel, because they don't know what the other student is going to do or what they're going to be like, or maybe they're going to have a different buddy next year, or they'll have the same one and they'll get to develop that relationship. And we do all sorts of different things during that time. But we also do group workshops, and I actually doubled down on that this year. And I now do 12 workshops for each student. So I have different age ranges for my group workshops, and each student has the opportunity to attend up to 12 a year. They're very much not quite drop in, but register for what you want and don't come to the others. That's fine. It's not like a weekly schedule. Well, you can do it that way as well. But it does keep that little bit of magic in the week where they're coming along to one of those, something different. It gives them a new perspective on things. They do different things and they meet different faces as well. So those are a few ideas for novelty. Let me know yours and let's banish that off the board. We've got 3 left. Relevance. How can we make our lessons relevant to students? Well, I talked about this as having 2 sides. There's the them learning relevant music, and there's the you paying attention to their goals side. So the relevant music side, yes, it is about asking them what they want to learn. But it's also sometimes about giving them choices they don't know they want. What do I mean by that? When a student gets to a certain level, for me, let's say they're in Piano Safari, which is one of my favorite methods. They get to level 3 in Piano Safari, or for an older student, level 2, I'm going to send them a list of links to different books at that level, which is like late beginner. Different solo books, which are just repertoire. They're not method books. They're things from Piano Pronto or from June Armstrong, who we had on the show last week, or from many other sources. And I send them that link of all books at their level, maybe 8 to 10 books, all of them with a web link where they can listen to it. So that could be to YouTube playlist, but it could also be on their site. Many composers have the music on their site now. So they can go listen to a few pieces from each book and pick their favorite book. That means that they get to seek out the music that feels relevant to them, or that feels novel and that they want to learn for fun. It's their choice. But it means that even the students who don't come to you saying, I want to learn JLS, they can still pick out music that's relevant, and they'll hone that over time, even if they're reticent to tell you upfront who they like or what they want to learn, or if they just don't know because they're not that into listening to music by themselves yet. Younger students often aren't. So that's one side. That's the relevant music piece. Then we've got the goals. And that is just about asking. You have to ask them. You have to ask them or their parents if they're much younger. But as they grow up, start to ask them. And this doesn't have to be a big deal. It doesn't even have to be a formal process. But you have to make sure to check in with your students. I'd say a minimum of twice a year where you have a conversation with them that says, where is it that you want to head with lessons? What are you picturing yourself doing in the future with this? And it can be in an age-appropriate way, like you wouldn't say it like that to a little kid. But where are we going? And what are we not doing right now that you would love to do? I had this conversation with one of my students last year, and she's meandered in different directions, and at the end of last year she said, I really want to properly start learning jazz. Great. So we started learning improv, and before that she wasn't really into improv at all, but we started learning improv. She's using the That's Jazz books by Bradley Sowash, and she's loving them, and she's really doing great with that. And I wouldn't know that if I didn't ask, because a 12, 13-year-old is just not, I mean, some will, but most of them do not have enough advocacy for themselves to come to you and say, I want to learn jazz out of the blue. They need that opening. So if you provide those openings and you give enough choice in repertoire, you're going to get rid of that relevance issue. We're down to two: student view and parent view. Okay, student view. This is about a student seeing their progress. And one of the best antidotes for this is something I just showed you called Kitsune questions. And you can take those questions and that general idea and apply it without doing the full game if that's not always relevant or always the best fit. It's about getting your student to look back at their old books and see where they've come from. And it's about, in the shorter term, pointing stuff out. If your student plays with a beautiful curved hand shape for the first time, or the first time without you reminding them, point that out to them. Say, wow, that is the first time that you've done that without me saying anything. You've clearly worked really hard on it this week. Congratulations, you must be so proud of yourself. Actually say it and point out what has happened, because they're not going to have that self-awareness to know that they've never done that and to retain it. And if you get that little bit of a conversation going about it and you do that regularly, it's really going to help that to retain that in the longer term. And then over the longer term, it's those questions like, let's go back to your old book, or remember when this was hard for you and now it's so much better or so much easier for you, or those kinds of things. And seeing where you're going as well. That anticipation fits into that. But the bigger problem for many of us was the last one. The parent view. The parents not seeing the progress. And this can be tough because we don't always see the parents and we don't get to have those conversations with them in a regular basis the way we do with our students. So I believe in having a formal process for this. Now, that doesn't mean the format of it has to be formal. That's a lot of form, isn't it? It doesn't mean that the format has to be formal, though. So I send out progress updates to my parents twice a year. And we do that on a regular schedule. And I actually show how to set this up, how to set up tasks to remind you to do these kinds of processes in our new Smooth Studio Systems course, which is coming out later this month. But the basic principle is to actually formalize this process so that you do it on a regular basis. Because I don't know about you, but if I just tell myself, every so often I'm going to email and check in with the parents, that's just not good enough for me, because I might do it with 95% of the parents 95% of the time. But that one parent I miss, and that one time I miss them, that could be the difference with that child continuing with music and not. That's just not okay with me. So I want it to be a regular process. And I do simple progress update reports. I used to do them through just a shared Google Doc. And then this year we're experimenting with putting it in the lesson notes section in my music staff, because one of my goals this year, and I told parents this, was I want you to only have 2 logins for piano, and I don't want to burden you with any more than that. There's one for students and there's one for teachers. So Tanara is the student login. That's where everything is for them. That's my goal. And my music staff is the parent login, and that's where everything is for you. You schedule your group workshops, you find information, you get everything there. That's the goal. So the progress updates now are in there. So I just, on the date when that's going to happen, I put it in the lesson update and do that for all the students at the same time. And it's just a few lines on a few different topics. And that way parents know what students are doing and where they're up to, and they have the previous ones to refer to as well. And they can just see that, not just the measure of progress. That's not it. They can see that you are paying attention to where the student is going. So even when things don't happen, they can see that they can let go of the reins. Many parents are used to being the ones to push things for their kids because in school or elsewhere, sometimes these things aren't happening without them coming and pushing for it. And I know we can talk about stereotypical pushy parents, but sometimes that is the truth. Their kids are not getting the things that they need and the attention that they need without the parent making sure it happens. And they're used to that. And they need to know that we've got it. We are making sure that their child is cared for and that they're making progress and that we have their best musical interests at heart and we're going to get them there, even when it's not going fast in one particular area. So when you stay involved with parents and up to date on their concerns and have those regular progress check-ins, honestly, this one I have completely alleviated as a reason in the last several years is the parents seeing the progress, because they always do. And they know that we do too. So they're all gone. That doesn't mean no students are ever going to quit your studio, but you can seriously reduce the likelihood that they will if you address those 5 issues. And that's what I've done in my studio, and that's why we have a pretty incredible retention rate. I mean, short of students actually moving away, it's very rare someone quits. Which is why we have this huge waiting list of people clamoring to get in because no one leaves and we don't have any more capacity. That's a whole other issue though. Address those 5 things, get them under control, and know that it's going to be an ongoing balance and something you're going to keep trying to improve again and again forever, but you will see results if you address those 5 things.